Welcome everyone to the 3-day international virtual workshop on research writing, editing, and publishing, jointly organized by Lavender Literary Club India, Cap Cameron Trust, Malaysian Industrial Relations and Human Resource Association, Malaysia. Today, the third day. Today we have two speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Mohd Ifat bin Mohd Ghazali, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Science and Technology, University Sains Islam, Malaysia. And our second speaker is Dr. Ganeshan Sanmugavelu, Senior Lecturer, Department of Educational Studies, Institute of Teacher Education, IFOP Campus, Perak, Malaysia. And now we are moving to first session. Our first speaker is Dr. Mohd Ifat bin Mohd Ghazali, Senior Lecturer, Faculty of Science and Technology, University Sains Islam, Malaysia. And
Hello
and his
everyone.
research interest on 3D printing, material science, biomedical devices, terahertz and millimeter wave electronics and RF sensors, his experience as a senior lecturer, his administrative quality as coordinator for Center for Community Engagement and Industry Networking, University Sains Islam, Malaysia, July 2002 to present. His education qualification, Bachelor of Science of Physics in May 2011, MS Electrical and Computer Engineering in December 2014, PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering February 2019. Scientific indexes, Scopus citations 334, H index 10, Web of Science publication 20, total cited 274, H index 8, verified review 3. In Google Scholar, his citations 550, H index 12, I10 index 14. In journal paper publications, he published 16 journal papers and 3 newspaper articles, 2 magazines, and conference paper publications, around 24. And he was awarded by many international forums, and he worked as a supervisor, and so on. Now, we are very glad to have you, sir. This session is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me share the screen with you guys. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Muhammad Farman Ghazali. I'm the lead researcher and also the lecturer in Smart RD, Smart Research Group, and also a lecturer in Faculty of Science and Technology, University Sains Islam, Malaysia. So for today, I would like to talk with you guys. I'm really honored with giving the chance to give a talk to you guys. I'll be talking about publishing high impact journals. So let me just say a little bit about myself to talk a little bit again. So my research is on additive manufacturing, microwave electronics, RF sensors, and biomedical devices. So that's my Scopus and Web of Science index. I'm also the lecturer in Faculty of Science and Technology in Applied Physics as well as Health Industry Technology. I'm also the lead researcher in Smart RD as well as SoC Makers. My education background in my bachelor is in physics from University Malaya, Malaysia, and I did my master's and PhD in electrical engineering in Michigan State University. So before we go any further, so we want to talk about how to publish or publishing in high impact journals. So before that, let's talk about why do we do research? So is it to learn? Is it for fun? Or is it to share information? Or to become an expert? So that's one of the main things that we need to do before we publish or write a paper. So we have to figure out what are we going to do as a researcher itself. So I like to quote Elon Musk. He will say that when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds is not against your favor. So that's one of my favorite quotes by Elon Musk. So basically, before we go any further, let's just talk to you guys about this journal. I think you guys have seen this journal. One is a cancer journal for clinicians. So, and then Nature. I think everyone knows about Nature. Chemical reviews, and the other one of my favorite journal is Material Science and Engineering. So, if you look at this paper, what stands out is the impact factor of the papers. For example, for the cancer journal, the impact factor is 508. For Nature is around 49, and for Chemical Reviews is around 60, and for Material Science and Engineering is around 36. This is very, very high impact factors papers. I wish I can publish in some of them, but unfortunately I can't yet. But this is what we're targeting as a researcher, to target this kind of papers in the future. So why do we really do research? So is it to learn, is it to share, or is it to have fun, or to become an expert in our fields? Basically, what we want to do as a researcher or to publish in high impact factor is to share our knowledge and findings, and then to provide an impact to society with our papers. People can use this paper as a reference to do their own research. It helps the society in some ways and so on. And other things is that to advance careers and build reputations. Other is also to prevent duplication of doing the research, because if you do some research, if it's been duplicated again and again, we just waste money. So if we do the research and we publish it, people will know, oh, you can't do this research in this way. So you can do research in different ways. So this is what we're trying to do with publishing in journals. The other one is to prerequisite for grant funding, especially with lecturers or researchers. We have to have money to do our research, right? So one of the good thing is to get grants. So, but people will give you grants if they know that you are an expert in certain research area. So this is why we have to publish papers in our research areas. So other one is to get feedback from our peers. So this is very important for me. I think when we get our papers sent and then we got a rejection, we feel disheartened with that. Actually, it's not that disheartened. It's actually to improve our skills and to improve our research on that specific topics. So I think rejection by reviewers is actually a bonus for us to complement our research to make it much better. So where do we publish our research? So here are the typical publication types that we can publish. So one is based on scholar, which is, for example, Nature, and then professional and trades, newspapers or analysis, maybe at New Straits Times, that's a Malaysian newspaper company, and popular, like say in magazine and stuff. So this is where that we can publish our research topic in this way. So it's not always going to be journals and stuff. We can also publish it in different areas. So sometimes in newspapers, I would like to do it in newspapers, is just to share with public, to make it more understandable and to get it being reached all over the place. For example, if you do it in journals, you can only target a specific person, but other places like the professional trades, news and analysis, or in popular magazines, you can target a mass people as well. So let's talk about Scholar. So in Scholar, you have several places that you can publish your journals. First is the full-fledged papers, and then proceeding papers, letters, and also review papers. So this is how I usually publish my papers. So the first thing I will do is that I will do in proceeding. Proceeding is usually done in conferences, and then letters, because if I want to get the published very fast, I just publish using letters, and then full papers, and then review papers. Sometimes I also can kind of like change out my orientation of this paper. Sometimes I do a review paper first, and then proceeding, letters, and full papers. But you can interchange whatever you like based on your needs. So let's talk about proceeding. What is proceeding? So papers that is published based on academic events, such as a conference, colloquium, are considered as proceedings. So they provide an exposure with other researchers in the same field as a proof that the research has been done and presented to the fellow researcher, published faster than journals, getting feedback from the peers. Okay, so when you publish in a conference paper, you have to present the paper, right? Usually either in posters or oral presentation. Usually when you do your talk in the conference, people will ask questions that you get feedback out of that. When you publish the paper as well, you will get feedback based on the editors or the review people who review your paper. You will get that kind of stuff. So I think one of the things that you can get a good exposure with your research is by doing proceedings. Here, people will know that what's your research. They can talk to you personally in conferences or in colloquium. I think, and this you can share ideas much easier. So I think sometimes people think that when you publish in proceedings, it's just a waste of your paper. Actually, it's not. Actually, it's a good thing that you can publish it very fast. You can expose yourself easily to other people. You can meet network based on your research using the proceedings, and people will get to know your paper easily and your research very fast rather than having it in journals. So other than that, you can talk about letters. So letters is a bit simple. Usually letters in journals are usually very short. It's usually in 2 or 3 pages. It's original and focused on specific contribution. So for example, you have a specific results that you want. For example, if you do electrolyte or you do kind of like 3D printing stuff, you want to talk about mechanical, you can just talk about the tensile test. You can talk about the stress and the strain of the research. Just with that couple of results, you can publish it in a letter. Another one is that one part of it's considered as one part of a full-length paper. So for example, if you talk, like I said before, you want to talk about the mechanical side of it, you can just publish it in a letter. So it will go very fast and it's much easier to be accepted. So that's why you do a letter. And then you can just combine them together and then you can publish a full-fledged paper using this. Letters are usually quick to present your ideas, followed by a complete journal article. So if you think that's something that you want to contribute, or you think this is a very important results, and you want to be the first to publish in this kind of stuff, you can publish using letters. So I think this is a very good way of showing your research to prove that you have done the research very fast and quicker than everybody else. You can use this kind of method. Usually letters are also used for proof of concept. So if you have something you want to show the people that, okay, you have an idea, you have a theory or something like that, or you have something of a mixture or a composite that you want to show, it changes a little bit of the properties of a certain materials, you can make it easily using letters and you can show the proof of concept very fast. So that's why I usually like to publish in letters, because it's easy to get published. It's very concise, very compact. You talk about your research and certain details on your certain results, very details in one or two results based on that, so you can get your information across to other people easily. So next is a full papers. I think everyone knows about full paper, right? You have to detail your study of your research. So usually full paper, you have to have a lot of results. You have to have comprehensive results to show that what you did is very, very important. So to publish in top ranked journals, it must be very, very novel. No one has done that before, or you find something new materials or new research or new outcome from your research, that would be a good way of publishing in a full length paper or full-fledged paper. Deep and detailed discussion. You have to be very deep. You have to talk about your results very, very deep in terms of what you did and how you get the results, how you interpreted the results, how you combine other references and see whether your results are true. This is very important for a full-length paper. And you also have to discuss in detail. So for example, you are discussing about HRD and everything, you have to make sure that your discussion are very detailed so that people understand and people know, and also people can replicate your research as well. This discussion on possible implications, you have to discuss on that. You have to talk about what kind of implication will happen with your research. You have to talk about how is it going to affect the whole research using your own research in the terms of the fields. And lastly, you have to show about your limitation of the research. Sometimes when we talk about papers, people tend not to talk about the limitation of the research. But every time you do a research, there's always a limitations. Sometimes you can't really get the results. Your components are not really the best, but you can talk about that in your papers. I think with all this stuff, for details, novelty, deep discussion of possible implication and limitation of research, it will be very, very helpful to publish in a high impact factor research. So lastly, review. I think everyone likes to do review, right? I think that was one of the common people are doing research. If they don't have the facilities, they can use review paper to research on other people's paper and then combine them together to get an overview of all the research. So basically, a review paper is a review of other articles and give an overview of the research. So basically, you combine 100 or 200 papers together and see what's the pathway of certain research, and then you combine all them together and get an overview of the research. So the review of the research are neutral perspective, so you can't be biased during the review. This is very important. Sometimes when you do some research, it's like, for example, in my case, I'm doing something about 3D printing on electronics. I can't be biased with my perspective. I can't say that, oh, my research are better than other people. You have to be neutral. You have to see the pros and cons of your research, or pros of cons and other people's research, and talk about their pros and the cons of other people's research as well as yours. It's a secondary literature. Different type of literature review, for example, literature review, systematic review, and meta-analysis. And also the length of the paper are usually very, very long. So basically, if you combine 100 papers, you have to write it in details. You have to talk about the pros and cons, the detail of the research, how is it being done, how does it impact the whole overview of the research. This is very important to do a review paper. So how to write a high impact journals. So basically, how to start is that you have to think of a topic that you want to do research upon. Read the journals, read as much as possible research on the journals, see whether it's related to your idea. Maybe some of the properties, for example, in my research about 3D printing, you have to read other people's journals not related to 3D printing. It's more towards materials. You have to look at that. You have to see whether that components are related to your research. One of the other important things is the third one will be find the research gap in the research. You have to see what are the research that have not been done. That is very, very important. See whether it's you can solve that certain gap in terms of research, what have not been researched upon, and see if you can improve the research, or you can improvise the way of the method of the research, or you can change the material which have a higher impact towards that research. Plan this research truly. One of the most important things is that you have to plan what kind of research you want to do. The methodology is very, very important. You have to see which kind of method you have to use first. Maybe you want to use a method, you have to do that. And then materials. After you find all the methods that you have, you talk about the materials, see what materials you have. For example, sometimes you can't really have that materials. You have to figure out the different materials that is related to your materials. That's one of the things that I'm facing right now. For example, I can't really get certain materials because it's very expensive, or it's unavailable in Malaysia, for example. Have to think about another way or another materials which is close to what I have, and then do that iteration and do that research point, and then also equipment. So sometimes we have great ideas. So for example, we have crazy ideas of doing stuff, but sometimes we don't really have the equipment to do. So what we can do is that we can find what kind of research that we have, and then relate it to our equipment. That will be much easier for us to do the whole research easily. Write down, and plan the flow of the paper. That is very, very important. Write down the possible challenges and way how to solve it. Because sometimes what I like to do is I like to do a flow chart. So this is the way I'm trying to do research. If this doesn't happen, do I have an alternative to that? If that doesn't happen, I have plan B, plan C, plan D to solve my problem. So when you plan some research, if you want to do something, you look at the research will be very easy. Suddenly you come across a barrier, or you come across some hurdles that you need to overcome. You have to have a second or third, fourth plan to do that. So it is very important to write a research flow so that if something hurdles or some challenges happens, you have an alternative in doing so, and then execute your research. So next, so let's talk about the first one. Is that think about a topic that you want to do for your research. In this case, let's say talk about drones. I think drones are very, very important right now, and everyone is doing research on drones. So what kind of applications you can do on the drones? So for example, you can integrate IoT, or you can do surveillance on top of that. And for materials, what kind of materials you want to do for the drones? What kind of structure are you going to do? Quadruple drones, or you want to do how how light the weight, what kind of materials you want to do. Are you want to do on metals? Or do you want to do on composites? Are you want to do on high performance polymer for the structure of the drones? And then the designs. You have different designs of the drones. You have to think about that. Next, read the journals. Okay, for example, in this research, want to use the drone as a surveillance. So you have to see what kind of research or what kind of research topics that people have done for drones. For example, you want to see whether what kind of cameras they use. Is it high resolution cameras? Or is it infrared cameras? Or what kind of surveillance that they use? Is it that you can use terahertz structure if it's possible, or you can use, for example, microwave, kind of like radar on top of that as a surveillance. You can do that. So you have to see whether what kind of research, what kind of details you want to do for the research. You have to read that a lot. So next, find the research gap on what people have not done on this kind of research. So for example, here, surveillance. So a lot of people are doing daytime surveillance, right? So for example, for this drone that we want to do research in my group is that we want to see the impact of the leaves or any of other infections done at an oil, for example, a vegetable farm. So this is the way that people look at it. So people usually do it in daytime, so you can really see it visible. But what happened during nighttime? Is there a way that you can surveillance during nighttime? So in surveillance during nighttime, what kind of cameras you need to do? You need to have night vision cameras, infrared cameras, or temperature cameras. You have to look at that. See whether that's a gap in terms of the research there. Other gap is that maybe the resolution of the footage is not clear during night. If you look at night vision goggles, it's not really clear. You can't really see in details. You can just see some figures. So is there a way that you can improve it? So the way that you can improve it by using algorithm to make the image to be much clearer, the resolution much higher. This is the gap that you have to see for this kind of research. Next, plans for the research thoroughly. So here, when I talk about plan your research, for surveillance, you have to find the necessary equipment, the drones. So what kind of drones you want to do, what kind of type of drones you have to use, what kind of brands you have to use. Some brands are very cheap, but it's not reliable. Some brands are very expensive, but it can do the job. But sometimes some of the drones are in a mid-range price. It can do a good job, as well as it's very cheaper compared to the high-end one, but it still can do the job. So this kind of stuff that you need to see for the equipment. Then the cameras, what kind of cameras you need to use? You have to necessarily use a very expensive one, or you can integrate maybe your phone into this kind of structure, or you can improvise what kind of cameras you can use, that kind of stuff. And then your method. So what kind of method you want to use? Are you going to use an algorithm methods to do the surveillance? What kind of details you want to do? What kind of AI? Maybe you want to integrate AI into some of your research, that kind of stuff. So, and algorithm as well, you have to need to enhance the image, this kind of stuff that you need to really understand about it. So then write or plan your research flow papers. Write down the possible challenges and the way you want to solve the problem. So here, for example, here you start, you have drone detectors, you have the confidence level higher than the threshold. And if it says yes, then you can initialize the tracker. If it says yes the first time, you can do the drone tracker. If the structure is very small, you can figure out a way to do all that. So maybe you say no, and that can't really get the drone to see or the image to see. You have to find an algorithm to make sure that you can get the results easily. So this kind of stuff you have to plan to make sure what happens and what can you do about it. So then just execute your research. So basically, you can have the kind of structures, you can have this kind of drones, you have this kind of maybe imaging structures where you can open up, you can see the night vision of all the structures in nighttime. This is what you can do in your research where you executed it. So, okay, now let's talk about how to write an high impact journals. So usually, paper format, if you look at it, it's also about the title, abstract, introduction, experimental, results and discussion, conclusion, and reference. So, but how you write the paper is different. So you have to find the results and discussion first. You have the results, do your discussion in details, and then conclusion, and then you talk about your method. Actually, you have done your method before, but then you talk details about your method, then introduction, abstract, and then when you look at all of that, you find your title and then your reference when needed. So when you talk about paper construction, usually you talk about the title, right? So usually when you talk about the highlights of the core content of the paper, usually don't use more than 12 words. If longer, it will be more complex. If you like lesser, you might not detail your work. So the good average of the words for the title is around 10 to 12 words. For abstract, summarize the major element in the paper, explaining the why the research is done and the objective and the outcome. Usually you talk about the problem statements, and then you talk about the objective and you talk about the outcome. Usually it's around 200 to 250 words. And then the key point accurately lists down your keywords, ensure inclusion of the tool of the paper in the abstract. Indexing services will help you showcase your results, your research and interest group. So basically, you have the right keywords in your title as well in your keywords. When people are looking for papers, if it's really to what they want, they can just see your papers and then they can cite your paper much more easier. So next, in your introduction, show and give a brief literature review on the topic in which you are writing and propose of the research, the purpose of the research. Generally talk about the background, specific, and then the knowledge gap, and then how it is done. So you talk about the overview of the research, and then you narrow down into what your research is and see what's the gap in it, and then show what is your research is all about. So how you conduct your research. So basically, it's like a upside down pyramid. Talk about overview and then going down to the specific. Next, about materials and method. A well-conducted study should be applicable. So basically, it can be done again and again by other people. Thus, the method and techniques and instrument used should be in details. If a common scientific technique was used in the study, there is no need to explain. Simply refer to the technique by name. For example, everyone knows about XRT, everyone knows about FACEM. You don't have to detail about how the mechanism of the equipment is done. You can just explain it by just the name of the technique or the name of the machinery. So next is about the results. Many people skim over academic papers, so make sure they use your graph and tables to convey your results. So basically, if you look at papers, they want to see specific results. For example, you see a material. For example, you're combining nanoparticles with 3D printing or some sort, and then you want to find that specifically if people have done that. So people usually just skim the paper and see the results straight away, whether it looks near to your results or not. So that's how people are doing it. So make sure that you have an attractive graph and table so that people can look at it. So that will make your paper to be more visible and also can be cited easily. In the text, do not repeat words, everything that in the figures or tables convey. Just state the key findings and highlight any unexpected or surprising results. So basically, you don't have to say, oh, okay, the conductivity of the certain electrolytes is at a certain level. You just have to explain the details of the results again. Just say that, okay, maybe at 20% of lithium perchloride salt, it will give you the best result is because of some salt. So that's something like that. So that will be much easier for people to just read and get the information easily. And now the next one is the discussion. It should be concise and informative. Begin by starting whether the hypothesis was supported and then address the implication of the results. If multiple explanations of your results exist, be sure to address each one. Never to overstate the importance of the research. Highlight the present contribution and future contribution of your research. For example, when you talk about mechanical strength of one element, you talk about the tensile test, and also you can relate that with maybe FISAM or maybe XRD and stuff. So you have to make sure that all the discussion are relatable. So explain the flow of the paper to be nicely. So maybe talk about the tensile test, and then when you want to support, you show the FISAM results and explain that. And after that, to make your conclusion more impactful, you can use XRD to explain that again. So this kind of stuff, you have to address the importance of that kind of result, that to convey your results to be better, this kind of stuff. So next, the conclusion. States the conclusion as clear as possible. What are you going to detail out about? Summarize the evidence of each of the conclusion states, and the conclusion by the statement regarding the significance of the work. So basically, you have to show that why are you doing this research? Basically, you want to show that all the results that you have, all the conclusion discussion that you have is going to contribute to the body of knowledge in this certain field of research. So this is very, very important for conclusion. Next is reference. Cite the relevant works only. Try to cite the papers that is 5 years from the current year. Avoid too many reference. Try to avoid conference papers, thesis, or website, because sometimes conference papers are just mainly just something that you want to show, and the results are not in details. So sometimes you can't really get the information easily. But sometimes conference paper are better than journal paper as well. So make sure that you see which are the conference paper with high quality, then you can cite the papers. Cite the paper from the journals that the paper will be submitting. This is also a good tip, because when you want to submit something to for example, Elsevier, try as much as possible to cite or to reference the paper based on Elsevier publications. So that can make your chances to get accepted higher and get more impact journals. So how to select journals? So this is an important element as well. So for example, setting a journal is your readership. Who do you want to target? For example, you want to target, if you do something about sensors, find the research topic on sensors or materials that is related to sensors, something like that. If you want to do something on 3D printing, talk about materials. You have to find your readership who likes to study on materials or to study about additive manufacturing. You have to find that kind of journals. As well, the second one is that you have to also read the aim and scope. Some of the journals, the aim are a bit different, and the scopes are a bit different than your paper. So make sure you read about that. And certain papers, for example, polymers. If you look at polymers, journals from MDPI, it says about polymer, but also you can use, if you look at the aims and scope, it's also related to nanotechnology, also related to 3D printing, or it's also related to sensors. So you can use that as well. So that's why it's very important to read the aim and scope. The third one is impact factors. This is also very important. If you want to get your paper to be known or your paper to be recognized, impact factors are important as well. So find the people with high impact factors, then you can publish that, then your visibility will be much higher. That's one thing. The other one is selecting whether it's an open access. So if you can publish in open access, so it's free, so everyone can use, so your better chance of being cited is much easier. And then talk about turnaround time. Turnaround time is that when you submit the paper, and then how long does it take to review? If you need the paper to publish fast, you have to figure out which of the journals are giving you a better chance of publishing very fast compared to other people. So usually high impact factors journals takes a longer 6 or 7 months to get the final results, but low less impact factors sometimes takes 2 or 3 weeks, or it depends on the journal itself and cost. So this is very important. Some journals are free, some journals is very, very expensive. So one warning that I would like to share is that remember that you can only submit one journal at a time. So you can't really submit, you have one journal, one paper, and then you submit to 5 journals. So it's not a good ethical way of doing it. So if you have a journal, try to send it to one paper, try to send to one journals, and then look at it all. If it's rejected, send it to another one. So please don't send your paper to 5 journals at the same time. Do that. Okay, sorry. Okay, the light went off. So okay, next, leadership. So let's talk about leadership. So sometimes when you talk about leadership, like I said, explained before, look at whether you want to do it internationally versus national audience. If you want to do actually, you go towards IEEE Access. If so, for example, in IEEE or any kind of structures. So another one, if you want to make it localized, for example, in Malaysia, we have Malaysiana, which is very nice as well. It's also people. So it depends on what you like your audience to be. And then another one is wide versus targeted audience. For example, IEEE Access is a multidisciplinary paper. It can be anyone from, for example, chemistry, biology, physics, engineering can access this kind of research. Another specific one, a targeted audience, for example, if you want to publish at antenna, you can publish it in IEEE transaction, antennas, and propagation. It depends on your preferences. So then this is aim and scope. So for example, this is IEEE Access. So here the aim of the scope is on whatever multidisciplinary open access, application oriented, or electronic archive. See whether what is related to yours. For example, for IEEE transaction on antennas, it specifically wants you to talk about antennas, including analysis of design, development, measurement, testing, radiation, propagation, and stuff, but only related to antenna. So that's the impact factor. For example, here, if you look at the IEEE Access, the impact factor is 3.367, while the IEEE transaction antenna propagation is 4.388. So this is also play a role. If you want to make very high impact factors, you choose the right one compared to the left one. But you have, if you want to make your access broader, you can use the left one. But having a good impact factor paper is good for your career, good for your exposure towards your peers. So next, in this case, for IEEE Access, I just can't compare IEEE Access with IEEE transaction on antennas and propagation. For IEEE Access, it takes 4 to 6 weeks, while IEEE transaction antenna takes 12 weeks. So if you want to get your paper very fast, you can just send it to IEEE Access. If you want to have more impact factor papers, you want to be more specific, you can use the route of IEEE transaction on antennas and propagation. However, it takes a longer time. So in this case, the other one, this one, sorry, it's not turnaround time, it's actually the cost. For IEEE Access, because it's on open access, it's a bit expensive. Here, in this case, it costs around $1,750, while IEEE transaction, which just take a longer time, however, it's free. So this is the good thing about this paper. It's free, but takes a longer time. So I would like to share you my usual tip in publishing papers. Research might be strong and solve big and relevant problems. Research needs to tell a story. This is very important. You may have to make the research like a story, explain in details, make a full circle of the research, talk about the big picture, straight away to the specific things that you want to solve. How does it impact the research field, and how does it give new knowledge towards the research fields? Figures and tables must be easy to understand. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it very, very difficult to understand. Make it very visually very nice. Make the big as much big as you can, and the figures and tables explain very well. Cite in for tables for references. Please cite if you need to cite it, and the figures must be very, very clear so that people can understand what are you doing and what kind of research that you are, what kind of results that you are showing. The paper must be written in clear and concise. Don't make it complicated. Don't make it sometimes people write papers with bombastic words, with kind of like a very difficult way to understand the paper. If you write the paper to be clear and concise, people will cite your paper much easier. Next is abstract is very important. In this case, why is it very important? Because people don't read the whole paper straight away. People just sometimes see the abstract, get different information in it. If it's good, they will just cite the paper, regardless of reading the whole paper during that time. They just read the abstract. Always follow the journal's guidelines. So this is very important. Sometimes when people are when you send the paper, just using a different format from the journal's guidelines. So that's why you get rejected. It's not because your paper is not good. It's just you're not following the format. Some people just complain their paper got rejected. It's not because of the writing or the results or the impact of the paper. It's actually they didn't follow the guidelines. So that's finally my topic. I do apologize if I did and the topic was not good or something like that. It's not related to you. But however, I think this is very important for you guys to learn about how to publish impact factors, which I hope with this certain guidelines or tips will help you publish in good journals in the future. So thank you. Any question? Feel free to ask, no problem.
Good afternoon from Ghana. I'm Ibrahim Haruna.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very intensive, very elaborative, easily to understand, and well bulleted points.
Thank you.
On your last slide, you highlighted some tips on writing a journal for you to look outstanding. And in your second one, you said the research needs to tell a story.
Yeah.
So in telling a story, there are different angles that a researcher could take. Either he wants to say the story on both sides of the coin, or remain on either the other side of the coin. So with your experience in research, what should be the focus of researchers in this 21st century looking at the story that their research should tell? Should it be on both sides, or should it be from one angle that another researcher can also take to also elaborate on the other angle? And another researcher can also take to also talk about both angles in the form of a discussion.
Okay. In my case, I think you have to talk about both sides of the angle, because basically there's no research are perfectly perfect, right? So some of our research have pros and cons, and some other people's research have pros and cons. Although it's our rivals, or it's our that we are maybe like for example rivals or two, but you have, as a researcher, you have to be honest. So in my case, in my opinion, is that you have to be very, very neutral in terms of what you're going to tell the story about. So make sure that, for example, if you do review paper, always be neutral. But in terms of if you do like your own research, you have to show that your research are better than everyone else. But for review, I think you have to make it neutral. Is my answer okay for you?
Yes. And in the last but one, abstract is important. Yes. As you explained in your presentation, the abstract looks like the first impression that you create for a particular targeted audience, because that is going to trigger for someone to have an interest in your research and would yearn to read about it when it is published.
Yes.
how should researchers take abstract seriously? How should we take abstract seriously? Since it is the eye, it is the marketing tool for you to attract a lot of audience.
So I think you have to use it very, very wisely, because sometimes in abstract, you have to put your keywords in your abstract. Then people will capture your paper, right? So basically, if you make vague, you just talk about your results, it doesn't explain anything, it isn't really impactful, then people will just, okay, this is result. So they will not really cite your paper. They just merely, okay, this is not, it doesn't explain anything. But in our case, to make it very, very impactful, you have to make your abstract to explain the overall picture of what the research is. What is the problem that people are facing? What kind of method that you use? What kind of results you get? And what kind of conclusion or what kind of impact your research is towards that body of knowledge. So that is very important in terms of abstract. People are usually, if, for example, I saw a lot of people that by just looking at the title and abstract, they just cite the paper regardless of reading the whole paper. So for example, they have this keyword, for example, nanomaterials using certain materials. They will just cite the paper and then they look at the abstract. Oh, they use this kind of, for example, they use nanoparticles, nano silver or nano graphene or something like that. They just cite the paper straight away. So that's why when you look at your abstract, place your keywords, place the impact of your research, and that will help you a lot in people citing. And also when the reviewer read, it knows that the whole pictures of the whole overview of your research, and just by looking in your abstract.
All right, thank you.